Before I was waiting here to start the session, I realized that I don't have my mobile phone with me. And then I actually realized that I raised my head a bit and noticed other people around. And what I actually noticed was that roughly about 70% of the people who were here actually were looking at the phones. Roughly about 25% were actually looking at the tablets or the PCs, and the rest was just idle, I think, maybe being tired. So I think that, as Jukka mentioned, the bots are something that we are going to use a lot. So my name is Jukka Laitinen. I come from Avanade, and I'll put my presentation mode as well. Over here, wait a minute. So I come from Avanade, which is a joint company between Accenture and Microsoft. Within Avanade Finland, I'm the cloud and digital lead. And today, this is the last session. I hope you have had a nice day, and I do hope that you have a bit of energy left for the last session as well. I'm going to go through a couple of things first. With the agenda, we are going to take a look at what is the buzz about the bots in the first place. Then we are going to take a look at the history of the bots. They actually have been around for quite a long time. And then we have a bit of information in terms of what are the capabilities which bots actually need to have in order to be successful, to have the meaningful conversations, and then we'll dive into a couple of demos. We'll finish the presentation by looking at how the bots can be extended in terms of functionality and features and so forth, and then we have a Q&A session at the end. Is that okay? Okay, good. How many of you have smartphones? Come on, guys. How many applications you have within your phones? More than 20? More than 50? More than 60? Okay, fair enough of applications. We actually made a study a couple of years ago where we realized that on average, iPhone and Android users have approximately 100 to 120 applications. That's a huge number of applications. But out of those applications, only 5 to 10 are used on a daily basis. So let's put it this way. How many applications do you use on a daily basis within your phones? More than 5? More than 10? Okay, roughly about the same, right? And out of those applications, I would guess that quite many of them consist of an application where you communicate one-to-one to someone else, or with a group like a WhatsApp, right? Good, I'm doing great. So let's get started. As we have seen, besides these communication applications, the mobile applications are declining. Number of applications are not that important anymore. But then again, as we saw within the keynotes, the artificial intelligence technologies are actually powering the rise of new user interfaces. One of them will be the bots. Another one will be the conversational user interfaces. If you look at the right-hand side of the presentation over there, it might be a bit small, but what it actually says is that there's over 1 billion monthly users within WhatsApp. And once we see when this all started, it's rather small, but it's a bit over 2008, 2009, when they started to work. The rise of the actual users have been going up quite high. The second line that we have over there is the Facebook Messenger, which is actually where the adoption is even higher in terms of the speed of adoption. But what it all means is that people are now spending more time with the bots, as I saw once I entered into the room, and I'm sure that you know that as well. And if we look at what Gartner is predicting for years to come, so by 2019, 20% of brands will abandon the mobile applications. They will put their money on somewhere else. By 2020, average person will have more conversation with bots than with their spouse. But really think about it. So that's the world where we are going. Another interesting topic, this is not specifically towards the bots, but it has an impact on there as well. By 2021, 20% of all activities individual engages involves top 7 digital giants. And I think the most important or interesting topic is that these digital giants are Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent. The reason for that is that within Asia, there's a uprising number of people who actually think that phone is irrelevant. They think that they are able to get the WeChat on somewhere where they can actually do whatever they need to do. They don't matter. They don't care that much whether it's an iPhone or Android or whatever. They just need to have the WeChat. Does that sound not scary but interesting? Okay, maybe not today. Okay, let's go forward. So let's take a brief history of the computer conversations that we have had. And as I said, the actual conversations that we have started to do with the bots, it's nothing new. 1966, there was a bot called Eliza. And Eliza was first of a bot, I could say. It was invented in MIT, and it was a Rogerian psychotherapist. I am not an expert on psychotherapy, nor Rogerian psychotherapy, but what I do know is that Eliza actually picks up the keywords based on whatever you input and then sort of feeds it back to you. I actually had a chat with Eliza, which you can see over there, and it sort of went south. It wasn't fruitful as you might think. But then again, Eliza actually told us that what are the capabilities that we need to have to make that interaction possible. So fast forward a couple of years to 72, and we had a Parry. I just wanted to mention Parry because, well, as Eliza was a psychotherapist, what do you know, Parry was a paranoid schizophrenic. So I truly would like to know what the hell happened in the 60s and 70s with the coders, because they were interesting in some strange stuff. But Parry and Eliza actually met. They were put to chat each other, and there's actually a transcript out of that somewhere in the deep down internet, and it is pretty interesting stuff. Jabberwocky, fast forward over 10 years to Jabberwocky, that had an interesting ultimate goal. So what they want to do is that they wanted to shift away from the text into the voice and audio. And that was an important milestone as it is. They didn't succeed at the first time, but then again, the Jabberwock is still being developed by enthusiasts. Alice, Artificial Linguistics Internet Computer Entity, was a milestone as well. You picked up the word internet, so that was available on the internet. And it actually inspired the movie called Her. And it also, from the technical point of view, the important part was that it actually utilized heuristic pattern recognition for matching the rules. Then let's enter into the 2001, the Smarter Child. The Smarter Child was important in how it adapted the way to actually reach out to the users. During the 2001, we had a couple of big and important chat platforms, AEM and MSN Messenger. Both of them are dead by now, but then again, there were big things at the time. And Alice was released to actually utilize both of them. So instead of opening an application and having chat, you actually contacted Alice and had to chat. Then from 2010, we have had the uprise of Siri, Google now, Cortana, and Alexa, and now we are going to see the uprise of Bixby, the Samsung's personal assistant. Even though the personal assistants are a bit different in terms of how they function, they share the similar concepts as the bots and chatbots. I also wanted to mention Do Not Pay. Have any of you heard about Do Not Pay? I guess that's fair enough. Do Not Pay is a non-profit legal help bot, which is actually based in UK and a couple of cities in US. And the funny thing is that it has appealed over 175,000 times and won those times for cases like parking tickets and fines. So what it does is that it automates the process of actually appealing your fines, and I think that's great. It was invented by a 19-year-old student, and it has actually made worth of million USDs to save the money for not needing to pay the fines. I would really like to have that here as well. But I think the purpose of having the do not pay on the list is that my point being that the chatbot doesn't need to be embracing the whole world. It might be a small niche player or niche thing, but then again, you can do it really good. So let's take a look at the capabilities that are needed to actually make the chatbot. The first two are, these are obvious, right? We need to have capabilities to process the user input, and then again, we need to put it out. Simple. That's what you code for coding 101, I guess. And there are a bit of things that you need to think also, as there are different ways and different channels or different chat platforms. You need to take into consideration that different chat platforms have different APIs that you need to call. So message routing actually might be a bit more complicated than just receiving a message and sending it out. Also, you need to take into consideration how you actually handle the state and handle the session within the conversation that you are having. Also, as the chat platforms work in a way that you actually can find, contact the bots as well and your friends, you need to be able to register a bot for discovery. And potentially there might be a need to actually store the communication somewhere for later usage. But now comes the interesting part: natural language processing and understanding. So in order to make the bot working properly, we need to be able to pick up the sentences that the user will be sending to us and then again process them in a proper fashion. The natural language processing actually covers the natural language understanding, and the TLAs, the three-letter acronyms, NLP and NLU are over there as well. But basically, the natural language processing is something that where we try to identify which are the sentences that we have on place. It makes this sort of a comprehension of things. If you think about English word book, it has at least two different meanings. It might be a book that I'm reading, or it might be that I will book a trip. So this part of the bot actually needs to have the capabilities to understand what is the intent of the message that we are sending. And this is a quite problematic area. In fact, the natural language understanding is what is called AI hard, artificial intelligence hard problem, in a similar fashion that if we take a photo, we need to identify what is in the photo and what we can do with the photo. So that's pretty hard stuff. So these are capabilities that needs to be there. I want to mention one case that we actually worked with the language understanding. So we created an application for after sales for service desk purposes, where a customer had 1.5 million messages throughout the year. They had roughly about 1,800 persons working in the after-sales department. And once we utilized only the natural language understanding part, we were able to automate or actually improve the customer satisfaction by 5%, reducing the needed workforce 30%, and then again increasing the assignment accuracy by 50%. So this is pretty big stuff, right? And this was only utilizing having the proper understanding of the language. If we fast forward a bit, the next part will be the response generation. As a three-letter acronym, we have the NLG on place, which stands for natural language generation. So now the bot actually knows that these are the parts of the message that we need to focus on. This is the intent, what the user wants us to do. So now we need to respond accordingly. That first might sound a bit simple thing, but it's actually extremely complex, depending on your why and how you want to go forward. So now we also need to apply into the equation how the user sees things. It might be that now within the afternoon you might be a bit tired, and then again the message that the bot should send to you should be according. It should be to the point on yes, no type of things. On the morning it might be more like have a nice day, so forth and so forth. So we need to really understand also the concept and context of how the conversation has been going and what is the maybe feeling of the user as well. Basically, what happens on this phase is that we determine the potential replies based on our understanding. It might be based on some ready-made database, for example, but we typically add machine learning just to make that little magic to make that more relevant. It might be that there are cases when that specific response actually provides better context or better outcome for the purpose of the conversation. Last, but definitely not the least, that is the user context and preferences. If we have a case, for example, for after sales, typically we might know who the user is, and therefore we can get the extract and utilize some data that might have been collected beforehand from him or her to make the conversation more realistic and more relevant for that specific case. So these are the actual capabilities that we need to have on place. Should we move forward to the demonstration? Okay. So I need to change a bit of setup on my laptop, so bear with me for a while. It should be coming up. Yes, there we have it. Good. That's not good, but this is better. So first of all, how many of you have used Microsoft Azure? Good. So this is quite familiar to some of you. That's good. The demonstration that I'm going to show is actually as a service. It is something that we might call a serverless in a way. It is built on top of Azure functions in a similar fashion. Then we have the AWS Lambda architecture on the previous presentation in the big room. So that is what we will be doing. The beauty of this is that once I create the bot, I have actually created it, so there's no need to click me around, but you basically literally could click this through in a couple of minutes. It takes a couple of seconds for things to load up here. And yes, there we go. So now you can see some code within the presentation. I'm not going to go deeper into the code actually here. You have seen some code, if that's what interests you. So within this service, we actually are able to develop the needed bots if and how we want. We can actually put the code here, and if we make some changes and click to save, it actually will be deployed and put into the use in real time. I also have capabilities to chat here, so I made a typo, but that doesn't mean. So I can just type in my name, and then what it asks is my favorite car type. This is a preset of a demo from Microsoft, so I haven't made these choices, but yeah, let's select the SUV, and yeah, I like the blue car. One thing to note here is that chatbot doesn't need to be exactly so that you are actually chatting things. You don't need to type it anyways. As you saw, I'm able to just click here and the responses come here and go as I wish. Another point here is that what is showcased within this extremely simple demo is that the chat is actually able to pick up the context. It knows the state where the discussion went and how it goes forward. So yes, if I now type yes or no, then it asks actually what should be changed. So simple stuff. I think that one other important topic here is the channels. I mentioned that this is typically something that you might want to spend more time or spend time to actually implement all different channels that there might be. But now, for example, what has been configured here and enabled at the same time, the same logic, the same bot is actually now available on a web chat, which we can see over here. It is available on a Skype, and it's available on a Microsoft Teams. If I want, I could easily configure, let's say, Slack. So I'll just click here, add, and then what needs to be done is to mention that, okay, what is my app within the Slack, and I just put it here, and that's it. That's easy as anything. If I need to change the logic, I change it once, and it goes all the way to all the channels that I've configured. To showcase that, I do have my form bot here as well. As you can see, this is same thing, but this is a different instance because previously I was within the web chat, and now I'm with my live account. So that is about how we handle the input and output side. So let's take a look at the actual understanding, the language understanding. And for that purposes, I'll just display the Microsoft Cognitive Services, which actually has capabilities to understand the English text pretty good. Do we have any English-speaking or native speakers here? Excellent, because I'm not a native speaker as well, so I might not know all of the things that happens over here. So what I've done here is that what is understandable conversation, if I click go, it is actually put over here, so it analyzes the text for me. This goes pretty deep into the actual English grammar, so what is understandable conversation? We can easily put something else, so we will have the last session now, and it analyzes it and then again gives a similar kind of response. So this is the part where we actually process the language. By this way we are able to spot that what is the technicalities of the actual language and actual sentence that the user sends to us. So that is one part of the equation. Now if we go to look at the sort of the mood side and understand what is the phrases and so forth. So I've used the same thing here. What is understandable conversation, and click analyze. What happens here is that it analyzes it and says that, okay, this is English, way to go, that's well spotted. I would be surprised if it wouldn't. Key phrases are understandable conversation, and sentiment is 72. What this sentiment means is that this sentence that I sent, and which was analyzed, the computer and the machine learning models behind it, thinks that it is 72% positive. If I would say, we have an English negative example here, so if I say that I had a terrible time at the hotel, so the sentiment is 1%. So the mood of the sentence is not good. So think about utilizing this kind of knowledge within the conversation that you will be having or will be built within the chatbots. You are able to pick up the tone of the person as well. But of course, this is not good enough now. Now we understand sort of the technicalities of the actual text and the sentences that will be sent. But now what we need to do is to actually have the understanding what the user will need to have. And for this, I'm utilizing still Microsoft Cognitive Services and Language Understanding Intelligence Service, to be exact, LUIS. What I have here is that I have a model that I've used beforehand, and as you can see, yesterday somebody took some hits and tried the service a couple of times just to make sure that this presentation would work better. And what I can see here is the different type of statistics that there would be. I can see some entities and breakdowns of them. So I'll cover through them just in a bit. What we have is also intents. Intent might be something that it's basically the goal of a sentence. What needs to be achieved within the sentence? Does it make sense? Good. So let's take a look at, for example, the insurance intent. What I have here is the different utterances, which is basically means the different type of ways that you can actually say what you want to have. So you can say it in a way that when my vacation insurance ends. That is a question which is related to the insurance, and the entity that we want to understand is the vacation insurance. Modify my car insurance, that might be something that we pick up, and that also is related to the actual insurance, and car insurance is the entity that we aim for. And so forth. And what we can do here is to display, now we can see the actual sentences, but if I look at it this way, I can see the entities where these intents are related to. So let's look at the entities first, maybe it sort of opens up that in a better way. If you think about insurance as an example, insurance, we might have car insurance, home insurance, and travel insurance. They all are tied into the actual insurance intent, but then again, they have a different meaning in terms of course, car insurance is different than the travel insurance. We might have a date time, which basically means that it is a date, like when my policy is expiring. We might have an item number and well, policy as a separate entity as well. And these entities are tied into the intents. And if I look at the insurance, I see some see how these are tied back into each other. And if I look at the suggested utterances, sorry, those are the ones that how the user, once they chat with the chatbot, these are something that if the computer doesn't make the needed understanding in terms of what needs to be done, these will pop up here, and it might be some customer after-sales person that actually goes here and says that, hey, if you say purchase, it means this. Or if you say that, hi, it doesn't mean anything, so let's just keep it as it is. So basically, I could teach this way the computer to understand the language even better based on the input from the actual users. Okay. So once we have done this, we will train this model, and let's see how that happens. So there's not that much of things, and now I might be able to say something. And let's see if it works. It should be loading results, but I have some issues over here. So what I will showing is sort of the outcome that might be there. I'll just put this in a bit bigger so you can able to see it. So what I've put here is that I want to get a new car, and what this intent has been meaning here is that most likely this sentence means that okay, this guy actually needs to buy insurance. Of course, we are getting a new car, but then again, if we get a new car, we need to also have the insurance as well. So the intent of buying insurance, the probability for that one is 46%. We have an intent which basically haven't been trained, which is now 28%. And then again, we might have an insurance info intent basically asking for more information regarding that specific insurance, but the probability of that is really low. It's statistically not significant. And sort of the beauty of this is that we get the probabilities out. There will be borderline cases where we are not quite sure what is the actual intent of that specific sentence, and based on this we can actually see that how high or low the probability is and act accordingly. Okay, so this was sort of the demonstration of this one. Does it make sense? So we covered the functionalities, what I needed. I'll just extend my desktop and put this back on. We went through the this slide, so take a look at what are the input and output, how to process language. We didn't went through in detail how the response generation will be done, but that is the sort of the coding and the things that needs to be there. I have to admit that that's not an easy task to do properly, but then again, that needs to be there. So I'll skip this slide as we went through the Azure Pod service, and then we took a look at the Luis AI, and by the way, here we can see the actual outcome of the trained model. So if I say view my car policy, it most likely is insurance related in 55% probability. So what I want to still go through is the extending the bot capabilities. Of course, if we implement the bot in a way that I displayed, that is nice and good, but most likely that's not relevant enough. Bot doesn't need to be embracing the whole world and all the problems and issues that there might be. Therefore, I think the ELISA and being a psychotherapist might be a bit too big chunk of things to actually take in the first place. But if we think about the do not pay bot, that is small, concise piece of bot that, sorry, that is easy to grasp. And just having this view, what I want to show here is that we most likely would like to tie the bots back into the backend systems. We might have a CRM system, for example, for case handling. We might have the ERP system for making the shipments or purchases, and the bot actually should be connected to those ones. Of course, it implies also that we need to know quite detailed who the user is. We need to know his or her identity, sorry, and we can of course check that with simple things like putting a PIN code in a chat box. In a chatbot, of course. So we need to have the connections to the backend system most likely. I think that the true power comes from the big data. Once we start collecting the information, we actually collect information not just from you or you, but all of us. And once we aggregate that one, we are able to make better predictions in terms of how the conversation actually should be going through. So that is going to provide a lot of information and a lot of background information to make the bot even more relevant. If we top that with the analytics, using machine learning or big queries as presented previously on this room, or some other machine learning ways, we are actually able to make predictions that what the customer might need to have next. And then utilizing cognitive services, we are able to tie the information back into the speech. Even though I have discussed now about the chatbots, but it's actually pretty easy to translate the text into the speech and other way around. That's simple things nowadays. We might be able to, or we might want to take actually a picture of a user and try to see what are his or her emotions. If we don't know the user, we might be able to say that whether he's gender basically and basic demographics. We are able to do a bunch of different things with languages, as I showcased earlier, and it might be that we tie back the bot into the knowledge base or do some searching. And then on the top, we still do have the channels and messaging part, which is crucial, I think. We need to be able to serve the bots in the most probable used ways, whatever the user is using, not just something that we would like to use. On the right-hand side, we have sort of the developer view of things. I used the Visual Studio. Well, actually, it was Azure portal, but you could use the Visual Studio and all the things that we have seen and here as well. And one last thing, but not the least one, we need to be able to monitor and measure the success and the rates and the usage of these bots. Otherwise, it's sort of a one-off. We do something and we think everything works really good or really bad, but we truly don't know that. So measure the success. So I guess that's time for the wrap-up. I want to showcase a couple of things. There will be a rise of chatbots. Major software companies invest heavily to AI services. Leverage them. Think and plan overall user experience. I didn't go through the user experience within this presentation, but I do think that all the design thinking and designing how the dialogue should go is pretty important. And it's a bit different beast compared to just designing, let's say, a web page or mobile application. So for that, let's have the questions if you have anything.
I think the presentation was extremely well made, and I've never used Azure bot service before. I've done the Facebook Messenger bots, but I think the chatbots, they offer a really unique way of contacting people. Like if you have a chatbot on Facebook Messenger, that's 1.6 billion users now. So you can do all kind of A/B testing and reach audiences that on conventional ways are just not possible to do. So I think this will be a really big thing, like the do not pay bot that you can get legal help. And there has been some talks going on that maybe the refugee crisis could be solved with chatbots, or you could provide other legal help through the chatbots. So I think it's a huge possibility, and you shouldn't definitely miss that out.
I think so too, and just what Max said on the second keynote, imagine what can be done. I truly think that the bots will be sort of a big thing, but there might not be one single big bot. There will be small bots that you utilized on your way, and once you have used whatever you need, that's it. You can move to the next one. But there will be a lot of bots coming up.
Okay, one question about the Azure environment. So in what languages I can use there when I'm coding or creating my bot?
Now it is supported. If you use the bot as a service, it's JavaScript and C#. So those are supported. If you utilize the bot service in a way that you code it on your local environment and then publish it and so forth, which is not that complicated at all, then, for example, Python is available as well.
Okay, so I can use like API calls.
Exactly.
Okay,
yeah.
That sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah.
How's your entry-level tier?
Sorry?
How's your entry-level tier? Do you have some, like the Google had 300 euros and Amazon has the free tier? So.
Well, yeah, within Azure there's actually a free tier available. I think that you need to pay if you have more than 1,000 requests per month, but it really depends on the service. If you, for example, use the LUIS, the language understanding API, I think the 1,000 calls within whatever time frame, additional ones cost like 25 cents. So it's not free, but then again, it's basically nothing. The cost is coming down all the time.
Okay, one question about LUIS. What languages does she understand?
Well, that's a good question, and that's a bit of a downside here in Finland. So at the moment, it understands the German, France, Japan, China, English, and something else, I think. Spanish, I think that's supported as well, but unfortunately, Finnish is not yet supported. Me neither either, so we are on the same page. Yeah, I know that Finnish language is a bit of an issue in these services, not just for the LUIS, but for others as well.
Okay. You know, there is this Skype that Skype can actually translate from China to English in real time.
Yeah.
Is it powered by LUIS?
I don't think it's powered by LUIS, but it's powered by the Cortana intelligence services. So basically, within those services, the language translation is part of the package, or not part of the package. It's a offering that you can choose to use, and it is over there. So most of the services and tools and capabilities that you actually see in Microsoft, what they are using, they are starting to make everything out as a service. So you use them, you combine the service or whatever is needed, and you just utilize them and pay as you go.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So after this, we will have the final words, and then there is the bar. And I highly recommend, if you already don't have these sleepers, please. They are very comfortable and airy, so please pick your own pair.
And then we have a Krista Siegfrieds as well.
Yes, of course. The evening will be crowned by Krista Siegfrieds' music performance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.